Every now and then you come across a company that is quite literally one of a kind. Today, we're diving into the story of a company that holds an absolute monopoly on a chemical that is vital to Indonesia's entire economy. It's a story of resilience, smarts, and some really clever innovation. So, what is this chemical? It's called calcium carbide, and the company is PT MDKI Utama, or MDKI for short. And get this, they are the only producer in a nation of over 270 million people. So the big question is, how on earth did they manage that? And how did they defend that position in a global market?
All right, so here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll meet Indonesia's Carbide King. Then, we'll see how they literally turn rock into revenue. After that, we'll look at how they handled some major global headwinds, dig into their financial story, and finally, check out their plans for a greener, more diverse future. Okay, first things first. Let's really nail down why this one company is so incredibly important to Indonesian industry.
So, calcium carbide isn't something you're ever going to see on a store shelf, but it's like the hidden backbone of heavy industry. It's what creates the super hot gas needed to weld steel for huge ships and skyscrapers. It purifies iron and even helps separate gold from rock in mining. The key thing to get here, without this one compound from this one company, a lot of Indonesia's most important industries would just grind to a halt. Now, this company didn't just happen by accident. It was a totally strategic move. MDKI was founded way back in 1981 with a single mission: replace the imported carbide that Indonesia had to rely on. By '88, they were in full production. And just 2 years later, they were so good at it, they actually started exporting to Japan. And they haven't stopped innovating. As recently as 2019, they opened a new plant for specialized products.
So that's the backstory. But how do they actually do it? Let's get into the company's beating heart, the production process. How do you take a simple rock and turn it into this vital industrial chemical?
The process is this wild mix of chemistry and just raw brute force. It all starts with limestone. First, they wash it clean. Then, they bake it in a giant kiln to create something called burnt lime. But here's where the real magic happens. They mix that lime with carbon and blast it in an electric furnace at insane temperatures. We're talking over 1,800 degrees Celsius. That is incredibly hot. What comes out is liquid calcium carbide, which they then cool down, crush up, and package for their customers. So what's their secret sauce as Indonesia's only producer? It really boils down to one word: speed. Think about it. While their competitors have to ship products all the way from places like China, which can take forever, MDKI is right there, delivering locally and fast. For their customers, that means they get a fresher, higher quality product when they need it. This simple logistical edge is a massive competitive advantage. But, no company has a perfectly smooth ride. And in recent years, MDKI, just like everyone else, ran into some major global challenges. And honestly, this is where their story gets really interesting. You don't have to take my word for it. This quote from their own board back in 2021 says it all. They were getting squeezed from both sides. On one end, the cost of their raw materials was going up. On the other, the cost to ship their products was going through the roof. It was a classic pressure cooker that really put their whole strategy to the test. So what did they do? Well, they were smart. Instead of just pushing forward and hoping for the best, they hit the pause button on their biggest expansion plans. They delayed the next phase of their new desulfurizer plant and put a brand new factory project on hold. It was a tough call, but it was a deliberate move to save cash and ride out the storm. And that brings us to the money. Did this cautious strategy actually work out for them? Let's take a look at the numbers and see what they tell us. This chart right here tells a really powerful story. Take a look. Back in 2019, before all the chaos, they were at about 80 billion rupiah in gross profit. Then 2021 hits, the height of the global crisis. You'd think their profit would tank, right? But nope. It actually grew. And by 2022, it was even higher. That is a crystal clear sign of incredible resilience and really sharp management. Okay, now here's a number that honestly blew me away when I saw it: 0.07. That was their debt-to-equity ratio at the end of 2022. But what does that actually mean? Well, to put it simply, it's a measure of how much a company is borrowing versus how much of its own money it's using to run the business. And a ratio of 0.07 is just ridiculously low. It means the company is running on its own cash, not on loans. That makes them incredibly stable and way less risky, especially when the economy gets shaky.
So they've weathered the storm and they're financially rock solid. What's next? Well, this brings us to our final section, where MDKI is doing something incredibly clever. They're turning their focus to sustainability and finding new opportunities.
Okay, this part is just plain brilliant. Instead of seeing the stuff left over from their production as waste, they started seeing it as a new resource. They're now taking unused lime and turning it into mortar for the construction industry. They're even creating a whole new product, precipitated calcium carbonate, from their waste stream. It's the classic definition of turning trash into treasure.
And this isn't just a one-off project. It's part of a much bigger commitment to being a greener company. They've got the international certifications to prove it. They've installed this cool tech called a bag filter that basically captures production dust, and then they recycle that dust right back into making more product. They even have a special team whose only job is to hunt down ways to save energy. These are real, tangible steps.
So we end on this question. MDK's story shows us a company that built its success on being a strategic national player. It navigated a massive global crisis with smart financial moves, and now it's building its future on sustainability and innovation. Their journey really seems to suggest that even in this crazy competitive world, a focused, resilient, and clever company can not only survive, but find its next big wave of growth in the very things it used to throw away.